Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Afternoons here on the Dove. I am your host, Perry Atkinson, and today is a very special day here at the Dove. We are launching a brand new program here at noon, following Ravi Zacharias every day at 12 o'clock. And we're really excited about it because on Mondays, we're going to be doing a program called Ask the Pastor. And we have a very special guest in the studio with us today. On Tuesdays, we'll be dealing with how to handle your money from a Christian perspective. On Wednesday, something to do with your health. On Thursday, Patrick Doyle will be in to talk about, well, all the situations that go on with life and relationships. And then on Friday, our good buddy Tim Elbert will be in the studio helping you grow things in your yard. But today, I am really honored to have with us as our very special guest, Dr. David Slamp. He's one of the associate pastors at First Church of the Nazarene. And you're kind of the premier guest here, Dave. I don't know if you can handle the pressure on this, but we're looking forward to you. But you being here, and I'm delighted to take on a subject that I understand ended up being your thesis for your Doctor of Ministry.
It did.
And that is, if I have this right, it's called spiritual formation.
Yes.
That's a big word, a big title. What's it mean?
Well, it really has to do more than anything else, Perry, with the spiritual vitality of people. How deep is their commitment? How consistent are their spiritual practices? You know, do they serve God from the heart, or is it just something they do weekends, that kind of thing? Trying to help people assess realistically, maybe objectively, where they're coming from spiritually.
Well, part of that is home groups. And and I know that you have a real passion for this. I do. And I want to say to our listeners, coming up a little bit later on, we'll open up the phone lines and give you a chance to join the conversation, because maybe you've been thinking about joining a home group, but maybe you're a little reluctant. We'll try to deal with some of those ideas. And you pastors who may be listening or watching, we want to encourage you, if your church is not doing home groups, to think about this. But Pastor David, you have worked hard on this. You've written a lot on this, and there are some positives and there's some concerns about home groups. There are,
sure.
But let me just back up and say that you have launched this in a big way at the First Church of the Nazarene, and it's hugely successful. How many home groups are you overseeing now?
We have something over 40, and there
40?
Are a variety of groups, right?
Wow. And how are they made up?
A combination. It really depends on the people who form the groups. We found that some groups will form around common interests, like they love to fish, or they love to knit, or they love to bake cookies, or whatever, which we like. I love the cookie baking group. Very good, very important group. And then others will meet mostly just to do life deeply and really to live out the Word and, you know, apply it in their lives. Even more than just hearing it and agreeing with it, maybe in a class or hearing it preached from the pulpit.
What is the purpose of a small group? Why should churches look into this?
Yeah, ideally, so that there can be life at a deeper level, so that the Word is applied to life. We talk a lot about Bible application, living it out. One of the values of a group we could talk more about later, but is really an answer to the question, how long has it been in your church since in the middle of a message somebody raised their hand and said, Pastor, I don't quite, go back a couple of paragraphs, I didn't understand that. What does that mean? They can't, I mean, we wouldn't do that. It's not the setting for it. Right. But in a group, they can. And they can process it, and other Christians can help them assimilate an answer in their lives.
Now, I know that sometimes you're asking people to not only join one, but to lead one. And I think preparation before you launch a small group program has to be pretty extensive.
Yeah, it really is. It's vital. We ask our people to give, and they do it. We've got a tremendous team of people, and they give themselves to about 8 hours of training first before they even start a group, or sometimes just after they've started the group. So we believe that if they understand up front how to do it, what the pitfalls are to avoid, what are the ways that maybe needs can be addressed constructively, how to handle objections and so on. If they know those things, then they're equipped. They can lead with confidence.
You mean I don't have to be a Bible scholar?
No, absolutely not. Well, you could lead a group, of course, but
no,
anybody
I haven't got
could.
the time.
I have a friend of mine said he had somebody say to him. He said, "Well, I've been watching you for 2 months now, and I figured out if you can lead a Bible study, anybody can.
There you
so
go.
I'll lead one."
There you go. How big are these groups? Do you like to keep them to a certain size?
Yeah, ideal size is about 12. I've read numerous books on small groups, and no one that I've read yet says anything differently than that. I've had a few people say, "Oh, my group is doing so great. We've got 15 and 20 people." And my response I want to say is, well, then you don't have a small group anymore. You have a class maybe, because it's harder for people to talk, to communicate in a bigger group. Some who are quieter, maybe more passive, more reflective, will draw back, and more extroverted people will consider it an audience and control or dominate the conversation.
Now, one of the concerns about small groups, it's another commitment. It's another night.
Yeah.
It's another something to add to my already full plate.
Yep.
How do you encourage people to think about it anyway?
Number one, your spiritual life is worth it. What happens in most Sunday school classes is there's discussion, and usually very good discussion, or ABFs as they're called some places. In church, there's really no discussion, and we know people on maybe a hand-to-hand basis will wave at them or shake hands. In Sunday school, you'll see people eye to eye. That's the relationship. But in groups, it's heart-to-heart relationships. So that's where the sharing of life, confidentiality, is a primary ingredient of a healthy small group.
So how do you say to the leader, and how do you train them? Because that's a key point. I think one of the things men fear is that they'll go into a small group, they'll become somewhat transparent, and then the next day it's front page news in the church newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be terrible. That'd just be, that's maybe the worst thing that a person could do in a small group, is share something outside that has been told in confidence and as a request for prayer inside a group. That'd be awful.
So you train for that?
Oh yeah, we talk a lot about it.
There you what's the responsibility of a small group leader back to the pastor or the overseer?
A very tight relationship. We're fortunate at the Naz. We've got coaches. We have 7 or 8 coaching teams, some couples, some singles, who lead 5 to 6 groups. They oversee, or they support the lay pastor. And then when there's a need that's too much for them to respond to, they come to the pastoral staff. Maybe there's something that is, and they have to ask permission to do that. Ideally, they would say to the person involved, is it okay if I share, we really need to talk to the pastor about this, and then they communicate back for pastoral support.
Again, I want to say to our listeners, Pastor David Slamp's with us today. He has his doctorate in ministry in this whole area of dealing with small groups. And we'll open up the phone lines coming up in a few moments. If you have any questions about it, call, because this would be a great time for you to learn more about it. I think sometimes people feel interested or tugged to do it. They're a little reluctant to walk into a stranger's home. Is it off campus? Most of them are off campus?
Yes, we have a few that are there on campus, but we found the home is such a natural, comfortable place for people to communicate. It just makes sense. Plus, it makes it, Pete Wagner was one of my major professors, and Pete used to say the church is filled with come strategies. You know, come see this, I want this here. You know, our deal is here, it's coming up next Thursday or Friday, whatever. Come, come, come. And this is a go strategy, so that we're taking the church to the community. We don't have a marketplace for the church as active as, say, Haiti, for example. Many hundreds of small shops line the streets, and they have passed on their faith that way. But in our culture, in our society, it's the workplace. So ideally, a group could be started at a workplace or with people who are co-workers, or it could be started in the neighborhood. We have some groups that have just not long ago started in the neighborhoods in order with a stated purpose to reach their neighbors for Christ. That's
wonderful.
Yeah.
David, we live in a very busy world. We're emailing the person in the cubicle next to us. I worked in an office atmosphere where they literally emailed people across the hall. They wouldn't get up and go to the next room.
Yeah.
And there seems to be, where we're asking church to be a very intimate experience for people, it can be a little cold. How does the small group help with that?
Wow. Well, you've hit it. This is so big, I think, in our culture. It's become, our society has become technologically oriented and impersonal. You can get groceries. I went to a store not long ago, a hardware store, and bought a bag full of stuff, didn't talk to a person. I got money out of the bank the other day without talking to a person. Yeah. The front porch that used to be the center of visiting in our neighborhoods has been replaced by the backyard deck or patio. We used to stop, and while we were pulling into the driveway, you know, opening the garage door, talk to our neighbors, and now we pull into the garage by pushing a button, the door opens, we go inside, push another button, and we're in our house. So we never have contact with our neighbors. So that leaves a void inside of us. That leaves an emptiness. That leaves something that we kind of wrestle for, and you can search for that intimacy in the wrong ways or in the healthy ways.
We here at the Dove will get calls from people who have, for whatever reason, I'm certainly sure it's unintentional, but for whatever reason, they fell through the cracks of a church, you know, and they're lonely. They'll walk into church, they'll meet a greeter, they'll go into a service, church is dismissed, and they walk out, and they never make a connection. And it's so interesting to me that I think one of the greatest things that we're battling in Christendom today is connection, feeling like you really are valued, that people really are concerned about you. You're just not a number sitting in a pew. And I know that small groups is probably intended to help with that.
Very much.
How?
Very much. Well, when you do life together deeply, we talk about that a lot. When you do life together deeply at the heart level, then it's not an embarrassment for you to call if your daughter or son have gotten into trouble, had an accident or whatever. It's not an embarrassment because they already know about your prayers for your son or daughter or whomever it may be, whatever the situation may be. We've had cases where numerous times, and we just think it's wonderful when we go to the hospital to visit somebody and there are already 4 or 5 people from the life group there or the small group there.
There you go.
That's great. To us, that's so New Testament. And it's very exciting to know that people are involved in each other's lives.
You know, what would you say to a pastor who thinks, maybe my church is too small for this?
Okay. I would encourage them to consider it. Actually, the best time to start a small group ministry is when the church is small. Once a church gets to 50, 300, 400, then it's harder to turn a big ship. It's harder to start or embrace a new paradigm, a new way of functioning, you know, a new way of operating. If people can start when the church is relatively small, it takes away the fear that when our church gets big, we won't have this family atmosphere anymore. Because you do have it in the small group. It's provided. There's actually one study that showed that the reason Sunday school classes don't average more than about 30 or 35 is because they lose the connectedness that they had when the class was 12 or 14.
Some churches will say, you know, we just teach and preach the word. That's all anybody needs.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
What do you say to that?
Sure. That's not what they thought in the New Testament. You know, now, if we're a little better than the New Testament folks, okay. Jesus had a group of 12. He could have just preached it and taught it and lived it. But he engaged with people at a heart level. He sent them out, actually, brought them back. We all know the stories. And he brought them back, and when they said, wait, we couldn't do this stuff, and then he coached them. He actually took them to the next level of understanding.
Wow. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, Pastor Dave Slamp with us, and we're talking about small groups. If you have any questions, you're welcome to give us a buzz. The number is 776-5368. We'll take your phone calls. We also have some other things to talk to him about. He's a pretty active guy. We're honored to have him with us. We'll be right back.